Welcome to the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm Barbara Peters, and tonight we have David Baldacci up here on the big TV. Yay! So, David, one of the very few positives, if one could say there are any for where we are, is that you and I get to talk again, because we haven't seen you
Yes,
for a long time.
I know it has been a long time, too long, so it's great to get together, even through Zoom.
Well, there actually are other opportunities. We've been doing some talking with authors overseas. Ian Rankin and I did a conversation last week and so forth. So I'm trying to stay upbeat in this difficult time.
It is good. It's good to do that.
So you look incredibly fit, and since I already know the answer to this, I'm going to ask you the question because no good lawyer actually ever asks a question to whom which she doesn't know the answer.
Yeah.
What have you been doing during this time of pandemic?
Well, we went down to Florida right after Christmas. We have a place down there, and we had some family come in before all of this COVID hit. I was planning to come back up to Virginia in April and go on a book tour, and then everything fell apart. And so we hunkered down in Florida until May, and I've been writing a lot, and I have a rowing machine down there. I think I've rowed around the world like 6 times on that rowing machine. If you don't anywhere, but so we came up to Virginia, and about 4 days ago, and now we have a tropical storm Bertha is coming through right now, and giving us a bunch of rain and thunder and all that. But it's been a weird spring for everybody.
So you're in tip-top physical shape.
Yeah, well, I like to work out a lot. I like to get outside, and in addition to rowing down in Florida, I was like riding my bike. It seemed like 25 times a day. My dogs got so tired of being walked, they hid their leashes from us, so we couldn't walk them anymore. They were just totally ticked off. Yeah, I try to stay out because being at a desk a lot. You got to take a break. You got to go out and do something physical, and so I try to do that every day.
What about your writing life? Has this been a chance for you to be super productive?
It has been. I turned in the fall book 2 months ahead of schedule, which the publisher was really excited about. I'm finishing up another book, a sequel to the book that came out last summer, One Good Deed, set in 1949. I'm about to finish that one as well, and then we'll be off to the next Amos Decker. So I've been very productive, which I guess is a positive in the middle of all this nightmare.
Well, I want to thank you. Here's my commercial moment. I want to thank you for signing all these copies of Walk the Wire. In fact, 2 different shipments to David. So I want to point out that we still have a few signed copies if any of you watching this are interested. And thank you, David, for doing that. You've been a trooper over the years. Even if you don't come and see us, you've been really great about signing books for us. Um,
Oh, look, the Poison Pen is one of the greatest bookstores in the world. I mean, I've been to lots of different countries, and you guys are the ultimate professionals. Not just a professional, you're incredibly enthusiastic about books, and that's what makes independent bookstores, and yours in particular, so special. I mean, you put the juice in the industry for us. I can't say about what you do. Wherever I go, independents I go, they always talk about Barbara and the Poison Pen. It's just you set a high bar for everyone.
well, that's very kind of you to say that. I was thinking that you for years have done a book in mid-April and a book in mid-November. And last year, to everybody's surprise, you lobbed one at us in, I think it was July, right? So
Right.
how is it that you are able to manage your busy life and also produce a minimum of 2 books a year?
Yeah, I can compartmentalize really well, which is a good thing. And I writing, so a day that goes by I don't write is not a day for me. That third book last year, One Good Deed, just came out. I was in Toronto in the middle of a snowstorm on book tour in fall, and I was thinking about writing a story set in '49, sort of a crime of the war, Raymond Chandler's story. And I was staring at my hotel window with the snow pouring down, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to turn around and lose myself in 1949 when the weather was really hot. And I thought it was going to be a short story. That's all, maybe 30 or 40 pages. And I became so immersed in the story that within 4 months, it was well over 400 pages. And the publisher didn't know I was writing, agent didn't know I was writing, nobody knew I was writing it. I think that answered the question that I love what I do. And I don't see it as a job, a hobby, or a passion. I sort of see it as my identity. And when I finish a book, I don't want to go take a break. I just want to jump into the next story.
Going all the way back to 1996 when you wrote Absolute Power. Before that, I think we talked about it. You are a lawyer, and we never actually crossed paths in Grundy, Virginia, in the coal country. But back then, remember when coal was real money? But
Yes.
I was thinking when I was looking at your biography again to make sure that I haven't screwed it up. I can give you 20 years. We're exactly 20 years apart. And I remember when I went to the law library at the University of Virginia, where you read the law, in 1979, women had just kind of surged into the profession. And as a result, you would go into the women's bathroom and there would be all these holes in the walls where they had ripped out the urinals to try to make, that was hilarious, more restrooms for all the female lawyers. But I brought it up because law is a really great preparation for so many different things. And even if you're not actively practicing, surely those things you learned about discipline and writing and research and all have helped you be such a prolific novelist.
Yeah, I think the profession share a lot of the same attributes. As a lawyer, the only arrows in my quiver were words, whether I spoke them orally in front of a judge or jury or wrote them down in a brief. And I had to take the trial record, which is identical for either side, and the same set of facts, and argue a diametrically opposed version of reality to the other side. And the way I did that, I told a story. I used the facts available to me, and I embellished ones to help my client. I sort of deflected did not, but I think a story to convince people that my version of the facts were really the one they should pay attention to and believe. I did an incredible amount of research. I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of witnesses. I deposed people all over the country. So I really got a good sort of understanding of human nature. I like doing all my interviews today as a writer when I'm going out and researching face to face. I like to see people's body language. That tells me a lot more sometimes than actually what they're saying. It was a nice carryover from practicing law to being a writer. It wasn't like I really had to change what I did for a living in some ways. Now, I have to say that, when I was a lawyer, the best fiction I wrote was when I was in law. It seemed like more stuff I kind of gleaned and made up the more I learned. But I enjoyed being a lawyer. It was challenging. It was exhilarating. It was a lot of hard work, as you know. But I think you're right. It prepares you to do a lot of other things in your life.
It does prepare you to do logical thinking, but I was also laughing when you said that because the truth is sometimes the best story could prevail in court over all the facts and evidence.
Particularly in front of a jury. Yes, you're absolutely right about that.
So, Absolute Power, David, I've been reading you in real time because we started the Poison Pen in 1989. Was a real shocker when it came along. There was, I remember the first book that we sold in which the police turned out to be the really bad guy. But I think yours was the first one in which the president had been hands off. This is so ironic to talk about it at the moment. I could hardly bring myself to do this, but still. The fact that the president was not, well, basically, if this is a spoiler for anybody, I'm sorry, but it's a 1996 book, turned out to be a serial rapist and murderer, and the Secret Service and all helped cover it up. It was really groundbreaking for you to take a figure like that and turn him into the antagonist in a thriller.
Yeah, the idea for that came from bike rides that I would take into Washington D.C. with my wife before we had kids and had a life. Actually, we would do things like that, and also from having my law office near the White House. I would pass by there. I'm a big student of history, and I've read a lot about lots of different administrations, and I was particularly interested in the Kennedy administration just because, it's come out obviously that Kennedy had lots of affairs and trysts with women, some in the White House, some in other places, and that was really interesting me. But interesting me was what something really bad happened during one of these times, one of these events, and the most powerful man in the world did something wrong, but so many careers depend on him. So if he goes down, you go down as well. And faced with that, a lot of people are very professional and honest and would call themselves rational human beings. They can be compelled to do some things they otherwise would never do, particularly in the heat of the moment. And then I had a story where I had sort of made all the bad people. My burglar was the hero. He stole from people and he saw everything, and he was sort of the moral center of that novel. And when you traditionally think of good presidents, Secret Service, and people who work in the administration, all turned out to be bad. And they turned out to be bad because they were protecting themselves in their career. They didn't want to go down. If he went down, they went down, and they were not going to let that happen. And it seemed to all make sense to me. It wasn't based on any particular president. It was based on just sort of the office and the potential thereof. If something bad, if somebody occupied that office, again, I'm not saying that I'm not going to read your poem later, but if somebody occupied that office who could do damage to it and who could do something really bad, what would that make all these other people do?
Yes, well, as I say, it was a groundbreaking book, and it was the first of your 10 standalones, but you've also written 8 series, and we want to talk about Walk the Wire, your new book, but I wanted to ask you, because I'm really interested in the story, and because I'm an editor and it creeps in, my guess is, and you should correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason you have all these series is you keep getting ideas that don't fit one of the characters you are already writing. Would that be right?
That's a big part of it, absolutely. And the second point to it too is that to have a long career, you really need to continually challenge yourself as a writer. Otherwise, you might get a little complacent and start turning to formula and ask yourself, the book, how did I do it last time? It's not what you want to do. So having new series characters in different worlds with different skills and backgrounds forces me to never be complacent. So I have to continually invent new things, new characters, new ideas, new predicaments, new areas that they will do. The story will involve the story. I can never drop into formula because I have so many different series and ideas going. And I think to have a long career, you need to keep reinventing yourself and challenge yourself time. You never want to drop into formula because it's not going to be fun to write the book. It's not going to be for people to read the book.
In the afterword to Walk the Wire, you pointed out 2 things that sparked your imagination and then fused into the story. So, want to talk about that?
Yeah, I read a story about a Air Force facility called an Eye in the Sky that came online in the 60s in eastern North Dakota. And it was looking for, back then, Soviet Union missiles heading our way to give us an early warning. It still does that to this day, in addition to, sort of being air traffic control for the space debris and all that. Adjacent to that facility was a military who were Anabaptists. It was a religious sect founded in Germany, I think, in the 15th century. And their whole religion is based on sort of one line from the scriptures, communal living. And they had farms and all that right next to this facility, but they had some other land that the Air Force owned. And the Air Force decided to sell it one day at an auction. The Hutterites won the auction. So they bought all this land all around this Eye in the Sky. And so they're plowing fields right next to this super secret Air Force facility. And I read that article. I was like, I am going to do something with this story because this has really piqued my interest. And so I sort of picked all of that up from eastern North Dakota, where the fracking industry takes place, and built a story out of those components. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes I read a story somewhere and it just sparks something on my mind and I feel irresistible. I just have to go after that.
So a good thriller is built out of a protagonist and an antagonist. So for that story, you had to pick somebody to be the protagonist, and you picked your memory man guy. Why did you choose him as opposed to one of the other ones?
I wanted, again, with the writers, you want to keep yourself fresh, and with your characters, you want to keep them fresh. You pick something that's total under them, that they don't really have any real support there, brand new territory, and you want to see if they can sink or swim. And I thought this would be a good exercise to get Amos Decker into something really new, where he would be uncomfortable, lack a little bit of confidence, really have to ferret around and see if he could pull it off, bring all these different elements of the story together at the very end. So I thought, and also because I didn't feel that he alone could counter everything I threw at him in this novel. I brought in another series character for some additional, like, I'll call it trigger power that allowed Decker and together and them together to sort of counterpunch against the forces that are arrayed against them. And I felt like Decker, if I were going to just leave it up to Decker solely, that he was not going to be able to pull it off despite his brilliance and his perfect memory. He needed some help. And it was also a fun way for me to sort of bring another series character in and cross the streams like they do sometimes on television, and also to satisfy a lot of my fans who have been like, pestering me for a long time to see these characters again, and I was able to sort of give them, double their money.
Well, the truth is, you've created a Baldacci verse. We did a program on Saturday for people still writing in the Cussler verse, now that we've lost Clive, but his co-authors are going. And last night we did the virtual launch for Michael Connelly for Fair Warning. And he too, in Bosch in particular, more than in the television than in the books, way more in the television, has blended characters from the universe that he has created. So you have so many going on now. You could easily do that, have characters walk on from other books and make it, is the fan feedback been good?
It has been. A lot of people sent me emails or posted on Twitter and said, hey, I can't believe I just read page 123 and you just blew me away. Thank you so much. I can't wait to read the rest of it. So yeah, it's been very popular. And the fall book, it's an Atlee Pine thriller. It's the third book in that series. And I've done the same thing in that one. I brought in another series character that she works with in this book.
I heard you say in a different interview that the great thing about fiction is it's like a time machine. So your 1949 character, when it's miserable here or hot or whatever it is, you can hop into your fiction time machine and go back to 1949.
I did that in Florida. It spanned like 5 months. So 2 weeks I wrote the Atlee Pine book in 2020. And like I said, I hopped on my little time machine for 2 weeks and went back to 1949. And it really is just as cool as it sounds. I did, sort of decompress when I got back from 1949 because I didn't want any of that sort of 40s dialogue to filter back into the 2020 novel. I think Atlee Pine would have been kicking some serious ass if that had happened.
But at the same time, you were writing another book, so it seemed to me a really interesting balancing act for you to be writing one and then going back and forth to the other. Have you ever done that before?
No, not with two mystery thrillers. I've never done that. I've written a thriller and a young adult book at the same time, but I've never written two mysteries at the same time. So that was new territory for me, and I really liked it. I didn't know if it would work or not, quite frankly. I decided, since we were stuck in Florida and we weren't going to be going anywhere and my tour was canceled, I knew I had extra time. I thought, let me just give it a shot and see if it works. And I decided about 1 week and then I was not enough time to really immerse myself back into each book. So I was doing 2 weeks at a time. That worked a lot better. And as I kept going, it was almost like I was writing faster on one book because I was looking forward to getting back to the other book, and then vice versa. We went along, and the writing went really well. Never really had any major gaps or hurdles or obstacles or anything like that. And I'm really pleased with how both of them are turning out.
Some of your novels have been turned into movies. Have you written any of the screenplays? And if so, what kind of experience was it compared to writing a novel?
Yeah, I had Wish You Well for film, so I wrote the screen for that. We had a great cast, headed up by Ellen Burstyn, who's just a fabulous actress. And people think, well, you write the screenplay and you hand it off to the film people, and that's the end of it. No, I was rewriting scenes all the way until the very last day of shooting, just because things change in production, things change. Like, for instance, we lost 2 days to filming because of Hurricane Sandy. And because of that, we lost two days in a courtroom, and I had to make up the plot gaps that caused by rewriting different scenes. And I remember one time we were filming at a farmhouse in Pearl, Virginia, and Ellen Burstyn is in full costume in front of the camera, waiting to deliver lines of dialogue, but I'm out in the farmyard with roosters and chickens crawling all over my butt. I'm writing on a laptop on a desk, on a wooden desk in the middle of dirt. And as soon as I finish this dialogue, it's going to go to her, and she's going to perform that in front of the cameras. So if you want a little pressure with your ham sandwich, there you go. But I loved it. We filmed for almost 30 days. I was there for every day. And they call them rainbow scripts because when you're writing a screenplay, the first version is all white pages. The second version is a brown. The third version is green because you have to send out. Everyone needs to make sure they're working from the script. So if the new pages goes out to all the different departments, to the hair and makeup, to the wardrobe, to the grippers, to the electricians, to the carpenters, So at the end of the day, you go through all these different colors, and I have all the scripts printed out from series and movies that I've done, and they call them rainbow scripts because when you look at them on the side, they're all different colors. And they tell you never want to get to cherry, because if you get to cherry, that's a lot of rewrites, and we blew right through cherry. We left cherry in the dust. But I got to tell you, some of the coolest moments of my life working on that film on location with all the actors and all the professionals, and we broke every rule. Don't never make a movie with kids and animals. We made a movie with lots of kids and even more animals, and somehow survived.
So for those of you watching it, let me repeat the title of the movie he was just talking about is called Wishing You Well. And I said that because I noticed that a comment when David talked about this and another thing, that the title of the book came across as The Wishing Well. So I thought I should clarify. And I will also say that David's in a southern place with the storm bearing down on him, which is why the sound and the picture keep breaking up. So just be patient and we'll carry on. When we talked to Michael Connelly last night, he's obviously been really hands-on with Bosch. And I asked him to define executive producer, which we determined in the end that a credit for executive producer was much like having a vanity license plate. Didn't really mean anything. And so he's been very involved in it. But you seem to, despite, four films? You seem to really prefer to stick with fiction, with writing.
Yeah, I look at filmmaking, well, it's to see it, it's to be sort of intensely involved in it. It's not what I do, it's not my forte. And it's also quite tedious. There's a lot of hurry up and wait. Early on in my career, when I was doing one book a year, I was trying to sort of carve a career as a screenwriter, and I wrote a lot of spec scripts, had some option, but none of them made. And I thought to myself, this is not a world I'm really comfortable in. And having to be in Los Angeles a lot for meetings and all that, because if you're not there, they forget about you. And I decided this is ridiculous. This is not what I really enjoy anyway. And so I concentrate novels, and they get turned into films and TV series. I had a Zoom session a couple of weeks ago. Village Roadshow bought the film rights for the Amos Decker series. They're looking to turn it into a TV series, and they have hired Barry Levinson, he's a feature film writer. He wrote, probably best known for writing The Wolf of Wall Street with DiCaprio and some others. And I found that he's like the second leading expert in the world on Amos Decker, with me being the first, because this guy just absolutely loved the characters, read all the books, has wanted to adapt this series for like 3 years, and finally got attached to the project. I say that to say that, he knows he knows how to put a television series together, to write the pilot, to write the first, second, third seasons, to write the Bible that they need to do. And that's his forte, and he's really good at it. I'm much more comfortable being on the sidelines.
Well, it helps that you have a good relationship and that he is such a fan of the series. Long-form television has been fabulous for turning books, complicated books, into a different platform, a different way to enjoy them. Ian Rankin and I talked about that some years ago, because when the I'm going blank here, Inspector Rebus were made into television, they were a whole book in 1 hour. And so Ian has bought them back and is hoping eventually to start over again and have long-form television take the Rebus novels and spread them out over time in a good way. So is that what you think is happening to the Amos Decker?
When I was talking with Barry, who really had a sort of a very clear runway for how he wanted the series to develop, he said, look, the Memory Man was such a complicated book, we could do an entire season just on Memory Man, or maybe 2 seasons on Memory Man. He said, we're not going to do a book and episode. He said that's not, because we want to dig into this guy. What makes this whole series alive and electric is Decker. So we need to spend a lot of time with this guy, and I really appreciated that. As a writer, when you turn your material over to someone, the only real, I guess, confidence you could have is that you feel good about the people who are working on it. And after my conversation with Barry, I just clicked with him, because I could tell that he really respected the integrity of the character and the story. And that's the best you can do if you turn your material over to someone else. And I would say to anybody who's thinking about selling your stuff to Hollywood, just make sure you're comfortable with the people who are involved. And if you're not, then don't pull the trigger. You're the one who can say yes and the one who can say no. And the other thing, here's a litmus test I've used for my film career over the years, and it's worked out really well. And I just throw it out to anybody out there who's thinking about this. They always say, how much should you be involved, big, little, in between. Here's my litmus test. You never want to have so much control over a project such that if it fails, they can blame you.
That is a wonderful line. So Patrick and Patrick's going to come over and ask you some questions from fans. We just spent 2 hours in our back room with Diana Gabaldon, who was signing, masses of Outlander. We're the Outlander bookstore, which is why I bring it up. But Diana has such a great experience with the people that have taken Outlander and turned it into amazing television that it's easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking, that's how it always will be. But it isn't. So
it's not.
I will wish you the same great experience for Amos Decker that she has had for Claire and Jamie. You and Michael Connelly have shared Clint Eastwood in terms of films, and he's such an incredible icon. How was it working with him?
It's this is in '96 when he told me he was going to direct and star in the film. I called everybody I'd ever known in my whole life. It's like, oh, Mrs. Dugan, yes, you had me in first grade. You're never going to believe what's happened to me. He was incredibly professional. The crew he worked with, he's had the same crew for like 30 years. He's very soft-spoken, knows exactly what he wants, never yells. I was impressed with the fact that he could set the shot up as a director, then go to Con Wardrobe and go on his outfit, front of the camera, deliver his lines, go back behind the camera, check the shot, think it's good enough, move on, break down the set, move on to the next scene. That is a lot of hats to wear when you're working on a big budget film and you have 200 people waiting around for you to tell them what to do. I was mightily impressed with that.
You might not know this, but he is a big supporter of film preservation, and my late sister was the chief curator of film at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and built their preservation unit, and Clint Eastwood was the major donor to it. So he would spend a lot of time in New York, and with her, our brother's name is Clint, and then there's Clint Eastwood. So he would go over to my sister's for dinner, and in the elevator of their condominium building, there would go up a sign saying, yes, it's the capital letters Clint Eastwood, rather than, lowercase Clint, the brother. It was so funny. He spoke at her funeral. I'd never met him face to face, but I've always been, impressed with the fact that he did a lot with his fame, to help the movie industry, but all kinds of things. He seemed like a really nice man and not spoiled by fame.
I've seen him sometimes since the filming at various events and all that, and I found him to be very humble and down to earth and not full of himself at all. He's just a regular guy. You can sit down at a table and just strike up a conversation with him. Just a very real person.
Patrick, do we have questions that Patrick's going to leg it over here? Patrick and I are going to go down together in this pandemic because we can't really be distant. So, we're going to live or die.
Okay. Hi, David. Can you hear me okay? Yeah?
We're losing him.
Are we
We'll be back
losing
in a
him?
minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, am I back?
You're
Yeah.
back.
Okay, I have a question. I have a question for a reader in France, and she asks, any plans to come to Paris? I'm sure all those kinds of things have been put on hold temporarily, but do you ever get over there? And then the second part of the question is, can you talk a little bit about your foundation?
Yeah, I've toured in France. It's been quite a few years. I go over to the UK a lot, pretty much once a year, every 2 years. And my plan is next time I come over to the UK, I will come down to Paris and do some things there because I haven't been in a while, and it's always great to interact with fans there. I love seeing different countries and how they publish and market their books. Everybody's a little bit different. It's fascinating to me. The foundation is the Wish You Well Foundation. My wife and I formed it about nearly 20 years ago now. fund literacy organizations and initiatives across the country. Our mission is to eradicate illiteracy in the U.S. And for a lot of good reasons. It's not just because I want people to be able to read my books on the beach. You can't be a full participant in the democracy and read it at a high level. We are on so much information every day from billions of different sources, and you need to be able to read at a high level, process information, glean what's true from what's not true, because that information is going to be important for you when you go into the voting booth and pull that lever. And I've heard statistics where, millennials in a day get more information shown to them in a day than their grandparents were shown in their entire lives, which to me is an absolutely staggering event. And I think that the ability to read makes you critical to the survival of democracy. And so how are you going to reach your potential economically if you can't? We live in an information age. I don't care what job you have, you're going to have pretty good reading skills. And to move up in the world, you're going to have exemplary reading skills. So we want everybody to have that. We want everybody to be able to reach their potential. Reading is fundamental. I don't think there's ever been a truer phrase than that. Reading is fundamental because it absolutely defines who you will be as a human being.
For those of you who didn't quite catch that in the little burp there, what David said was that reading is essential for democracy. And you also pointed out something that I have seen you say, which is that a democracy depends on votes, but a dictatorship or a strongman just needs followers.
You'd be surprised how quickly you can transition from voters to followers, and involuntarily. And history is full of examples of that happening. And for anyone to say that it couldn't happen in this country or any other country, then I think you're almost guaranteed that it will happen because you just let your guard down. Democracy comes with a price. Democracy is not free. It's not just guaranteed. We have to work at it. It's almost like being a mayor. You have to work at it. And work at it fails.
Patrick, any other questions?
Yes. How did you get the idea for The Winner? This reader says it's one of her favorites.
Law school, we had to write a paper on something to do with public policy, and also with the federal regulation of the fair speech doctrine. And in the mid 80s, when I was in law school, lotteries were coming back into vogue in states. There had been lotteries in the U.S. back in the 1800s, and they ultimately were all banned under federal law because they were all corrupt. All of them were corrupt. Everybody's done. And I think, I don't know if it was New Hampshire or Vermont or one of the different states, reintroduced state lotteries back in the 60s, and very shortly thereafter, 70s, 80s, 90s, every state in the District of Columbia now has lotteries. But back then, there was no regulation of what states in their advertising could say about it. They could say, play the lottery, everybody wins. That's just how blatant it was. And I argued that there should be regulation of what states can do in their advertising, and now there is, not because of what I did, but because of other people. So then I was thinking about the lottery. I thought, lottery is just a regressive tax. People do not play the lottery. People who are on lower socioeconomic levels play the lottery, and they spend more money on it than they should. And because they feel like this is their only shot at the American dream, because they work 6 jobs and they're not getting ahead, so they go out and buy this ticket and hoping to win the lottery. So I hate lotteries. I don't think lotteries are good. I think they're a poison on the people. And so in The Winner, I came up with an idea where there was a woman, Luann Tyler, and she was very poor and was in a really bad relationship, had a young daughter. She wanted to get out. This man, Jack, to her under a subfusion, said, I can reach, you're poor, but I can make you rich. I can change your whole life. All you have to do is play the lottery because I can pick the winners and I can make you a winner. It's not legal, it's wrong, it's bad, it's morally bad, but no one will know except you and me. All you have to do is play and all of your dreams will come true. And for me, that was sort of a metaphor for what the lottery is telling you. And at the end of that, it turns out that if you win the lottery, a lot of bad things happen. Money does not solve all of your problems, and sometimes it makes them far worse.
It can actually make you a target for all kinds of bad actors too, which is extreme. There have been quite a few crime fiction novels written about the fact that lottery winners can all become targets and victims. So you're right, it isn't easy. Patrick, anything else?
So, yeah.
Yes. Let's see. Will you ever write a sequel to True Blue?
Yes, the sister of the chief of police in D.C. I met Cathy Lanier when she was the first female police chief in D.C. Interviewed her while I was working on the novel, became friends with her. What an inspiration. She was just an incredible person. And I thought I was going to write a sequel to Mace Perry immediately after True Blue came. And then I decided with some others. And I know it's no rhyme or reason to it, but it's all the interest factor. And what am I most interested in? Because I really feel like that fires, the fire in the belly, and you can write a better book. I won't say that I won't bring her back because I think that she's a really cool character. I think she has more room to grow as a character. And if I think of a way to do that, I will.
I have several questions about or comments about your characters' names. And how do you come about choosing these names? They're very unique. And do you have a favorite?
Natalie Pine name came from, it's a Southern name. It could be either a boy or a girl. When I would go visit my parents in Richmond, their exit off the highway, which I saw a million times. If you go to the left, you go to Elmont. If you go to the right, you go to Atlee, Virginia. And when I was in high school, I played football and I also wrestled. So
Hold on a minute, we've lost you.
Yeah. I went different. Then, oh. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Hang on a second. Let me.
While you're doing that, let me say something. For those of you watching it who are realizing that it's hard to hear David some of the time, this is being recorded, and with luck, we are turning it into a podcast. Not with luck, but with luck, the podcast will have a better sound than the video does. And unfortunately, because of the storm, the internet connection where David is pretty weak. So the podcasts go up on poisonpen.com, and it'll be there tomorrow or even tonight. So if you're a little bit frustrated, you can download the podcast and listen to it. Are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can now. So should we start that question over? What was the question, Patrick? I've forgotten.
The names.
Oh, the
yes,
names.
The names.
Right. You were talking about Atlee Pine. That was it.
Yeah, Atlee Pine. So I wanted her name, the first name to be very different and unusual, and I certainly got a lot of feedback from people saying, "Is Atlee actually a name for people?" And I said, "Yes, it is." Amos Decker was such a unique character, very different from. I didn't want to for Bill or Joe Harry or whatever. Amos, is a name you don't hear very often. So that sort of branded him as a little bit unique, and you just sit up and take notice. And then Decker is kind of a name that everybody sort of recognizes, and it just seems to fit. Names are hard. Sometimes they come easy for me, and sometimes not so easy. And I've struggled many times with coming up with the right names with people. Will Roby, last name came from Cary Grant's character in To Catch a Thief, because I've always loved that name, Roby, and it's going to fit him too. It was solid, and that's what he is.
Such a great movie, too. What about titles, David? Your books, I think, oftentimes you all think that titles are really the author's work, but it isn't the case. It often turns out to be a decision by sales and marketing at the publisher. Do you get to keep most of your titles? Do you write most of them?
I do, yeah. In fact, I of all the books I've written, maybe there are only 2 or 3 titles that didn't really emanate from me. I obsess over titles. I think they're really important. Some people think, well, just put your name on it and the title doesn't really matter. And I'm like, I don't take titles for granted because I like interesting titles as well. I try to get to something in the book to the extent I can. And sometimes it's down, I make something that's catchy, that's punchy, that's short. When I did Long Road to Mercy, I really fought for that title. They thought, that's a lot of words on the book, Long Road to Mercy. I said, yeah, but it's exactly what the book is about. This is a series, and it's going to be a very long road to mercy. And I just think it really fit that. So sometimes it's a concept that's about more than just one book. It's a title that sort of tells you this is going to be multiple books, and just hang on for the ride.
Why did you pick Walk the Wire for this particular book?
This book had, so many plot funnel that it was quite the straddle. You know, this was this high wire act for Amos Decker, and if one little misstep here or there, and the whole house of cards came tumbling down, including him, landing flat on his face in the middle of the fracking industry. So that's where that wire, that's where the title came from.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Back up.
Okay, let's see. I have a reader here who is a big admirer of the Camel Club series, and was just wondering, kind of, if you could talk about where that idea came from initially, and so forth.
The Camel Club, when I was a lawyer, they just arrived there from Virginia, and I was walking past Lafayette Park, and this is before the Oklahoma City bombing, before they closed Pennsylvania Avenue off the street to car traffic. And Lafayette Park was filled with what I call permanent protesters. And there were people there with big banners. I remember the big banner stretched across 2 trees, and it said, "Have a nice doomsday." That was his banner set in Lafayette Park. And I thought maybe I should go back to Virginia. But there was a woman there, and she had a little tent, and she was giving out pamphlets that she herself, she was anti-nuclear war, nuclear weaponry protest. In Park for 25 years. The Secret Service got to know her. She passed away a few years ago, but she was there pretty much every single day. I remember walking past these group of what I call permanent White House protesters, thinking, what if one of them was somebody who had a very secret background, worked for the government, then got sort of burned and went on the run and undercover, but is now here sort of being a protester against this thing that really cost him everything. And I stuck that in my mind for probably 9 or 10 years, just in the back of my head. And when I was thinking of an idea for an ensemble cast headed up by a guy I wanted to call Oliver Stone, this observation came back to me from Lafayette Park a decade before. And I thought, he's my permanent White House protester. He's the guy hanging out in Lafayette Park. He's the guy who's silently protesting what the government did to him, and many like him. And so that's where the Camel Club came from. Just taking a walk in the park.
Novelists do see the world through different eyes. There's absolutely no question about it. Another one, Patrick?
Sure. Kind of a question, more of just a comment about the movie version of The Christmas Train. Were you involved in that very much, and how did that go?
Yeah, I think I'm the first thriller writer to have a movie on Hallmark Channel. I could be wrong about that, maybe. It was a great experience, and they sent me drafts of the scripts. I put my notes and inputs and thoughts on them. They sent me dailies that I looked at while the filming was going on, and I had comments on that. The cast was great. I just thought the cast was, because these were actors you don't normally see on Hallmark movies. They have, there's a lot of actors who are in like 30 different Hallmark movies in a single year. They just, cross over and they do one after another. And this was turned out to be the highest rated Hallmark movie in Hallmark history. And I thought it was very loyal to the book. Again, it was not one of my longer books, so the adaptation might have been a little bit easier because of that. So most of the stuff that was in the novel turned out to be in the movie. I do remember that I got some comments from them about, you've got in the book the robber on the train is a Catholic priest. I said, well, no, he's not a Catholic priest. He's pretending to be. And he said, yeah, but we really don't want to upset the Catholic Church and make him something else. So I said, okay, how about a teacher? We can make him, pretending he's an educator. And they said, well, the National Education Association is really, we don't want to make them mad either. And I said, can you make him something else? I said, well, I'm going to just make him a human being, just a human being. And he doesn't have to pretend, he can actually be a human being. So they said, spot on, we're going to go with that.
That's, excuse me, that's hilarious, because years ago when Chocolat, the great novel by Joanne Harris, came out, I was lucky enough to be her date at the premiere in New York, and I was so shocked to see in the movie that the villain, I won't give this away, that the villain in Chocolat was a different villain in the movie for exactly the same reasons you're talking about. So I can easily believe that happened. Another question, Patrick?
how is it writing from that perspective, and how does it differ from your, writing an adult thriller?
I had a blast writing those fantasy novels, creating a whole new world from scratch where I got to put in every ingredient element. It was just, I felt liberated because I didn't have to tether anything to the real world. I could make it all up as I went along. I have to tell you that when I first sat down to write it, I knew I had to bring my A game. Kids are really astute, and if you think you're going to write down to them and make it a little simple, you do so at your peril. Kids will just close you immediately. They'll just sense that you're being condescending and dumbing it down, and you're going to lose them. So, as far as character, dialogue, narrative, action, twists and turns, plotting, I had to bring my A game, and I took that very seriously. Scholastic approached me years ago to write the final book in the 39 Includers. So I met with New York, and I said, "No, I'm a thriller writer. Why did you pick me or want me to do this?" They said, "Well, you've written a lot about children in your thrillers as well. We think you can do this." And so I remember meeting with them at lunch in a fancy restaurant in New York, and all the executives from Scholastic, and so I decided to have a little fun with them. I said, "Okay, well, people in my books die a lot. I have a very high body count. So in this book, can I kill people?" And they all kind of looked around nervously and said, "Well, yeah, people have died in the 39 Clues, yes." I said, "Okay, is there anyone I can't kill?" And they said, "Well, the brother and sister who have been in all the books really like it. They could survive." And I said, "Well, grievously injured them." And I thought poor Dick Robinson, the head of Scholastic, was going to get up and leave, thinking to himself, "This is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my whole life. This guy's a psychopath." And then I told him I was just kidding. And I ended up writing the book. I had to wait for the other 5 books to be written. I had to go back and read all 5 books. Then I had to thread all the things in those 5 books into the final 6th book. And that gave me, I think, some good training for writing for the YA in the middle grade reading group. But I loved writing those fantasy novels. It was just one of the coolest experiences of my life.
We kind of lost you for a moment. Could you repeat the name of the series in the book, David?
Yeah, it's the Vega Jane series. Vega Jane is my protagonist. And the books the first one is The Finisher, because she was a finisher at the job that she had. The second book was The Keeper. The third book was, what was the third book? I'm trying to remember the title of that. I took it from an epic play. I'll have to think of that. And the fourth one was The Stars Below. And it sort of chronicled this saga of her life, Vega Jane and friends in this fantasy world. And it was terrific fun.
Do you have a final question over there?
Sure. This is sort of a follow-up question about the foundation. And they ask, does it focus on reaching kids, adults, or do they have different, is one group more difficult to reach?
It's a great question, and I've given that a lot of thought over the years. We started out with adult literacy as our primary focus, and I'll tell you why. There's almost no government money for adult literacy to help adults learn how to read. And I remember, almost all money comes from our foundations, like the HUL Foundation. I remember asking someone in the field at one time why that was. They said, well, if you think about it, if the government starts to spend billions of dollars on adult education, they are tacitly acknowledging that the K-12 program in this country is not doing what it should be doing. Too many people are falling through the cracks. They're never going to admit that. So they're not going to pour a lot of money at it. And over the years, we have evolved such that we are now more family literacy, where we want to teach families. Because sometimes you reach the adults through the kids. And we found that a lot of times the adults who can't read want to actually make the effort to learn how to read when a significant event occurs in their life, when they either become parents or grandparents. And then they want to be able to read to their kids or to their grandkids. And so we try to approach both and teach them at the same time. The family literacy, if you can make literacy a focal point of people's lives and their family. And we also collect books on my book tour. I send these big white boxes, and we have an organization, Feeding Body and Mind. So we collect new and gently used books from my fans, and then we send those books, ship those books to food banks across the country. Because poverty and literacy go hand in hand. If you have low literacy skills, you probably are food chickens as well, because you don't earn enough money to feed you, yourself, and your family. So when you go to the food banks to get food, what you need to survive, you get books to take home, which can break you out of that generational cycle of poverty. And over the last 7 or 8 years, we've collected over 2 million books and distributed them out through food banks across the United States. I want to fill up every home in the United States with books. You would be astonished how many homes in this country have never seen a book cross its threshold. And to me, that is just a stunning result in the richest country in the world. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, limited means. I grew up in a very segregated society. I could have grown up with that mindset and perspective. What saved me from that fate, that awful fate, was books. See, I didn't get to travel anywhere outside of Virginia when I was a kid. We didn't have the money to do it. I saw the world through books. So I went to the library every week and I read about people who didn't look like me, think like me, dress like me, eat like me, pray like me. But we had one common denominator, and that was our humanity. And so books taught me empathy. Books taught me to try to understand other people, not to judge them, and to understand that people are people. And we should walk in their shoes. We should share in their experiences. We should try to reach common ground in all respects. I would have had a very different development but for books, and that's why never seen a bad result from a book being at home. I've seen many terrible results from no books being at home.
Well, David, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm going to be really bad, and I'm going to put you on the spot and say I hope we can do this again in November. It would be really a pleasure. We'll have new things to talk about.
Barbara, I would love to do that. We will make that happen.
So the good thing is, again, I'll come back to it. If there's a positive in the pandemic, we have found new ways to connect with you and other authors. So I think that's very exciting. And we all have to work on the technology, which is never perfect, right? So I want to thank everybody for watching this. Do check the podcast, and we'll see if we can improve the sound. And read. Go home and read. Stay safe. Stay reading. Bye, David.
Yeah, bye. Take care.